I walked into a bar in London near where I was living at the time, and I saw a sign behind the bar that said, we accept Bitcoin accepted here. And I was like, what is that? So I didn't actually buy any until 2014 when the Mt. Gox thing had happened. Obviously, it was a big disaster, but Bitcoin wasn't too badly affected. Like nothing, the networks kept going.
What are the narratives and trends that you're looking at in year 2025?
AI and crypto, there is a natural crossover with that because I can foresee a time, probably not too far away, where AI agents are using crypto wallets to transact on the blockchain.
Right now, when it comes to layer 1, you have Ethereum, you have Solana, you have Sui, you have Near. Which one do you think will be the winner?
I mean, I think they can all win. Ideally, in a few years' time, most people don't know and don't care which layer 1 they're using.
Hello， 大家好。那今天呢，我是在 CoinW 的 office， 我是 with Guy 是 CoinW 的其中一个创办人。因为我现在礼拜就是来这个多更2049嘛，在这个多更2049，你也是应该会有看到 Guy 和 CZ 的那个照片。Guy 是其中一个，也是 interview CZ 的，所以 Guy 本身呢有很多了解，很多很好的 network 和 connection 在整个市场，有很多不一样的 insights。所以我今天在这个 CoinW 的 office， 我就要问他几个问题。如果你喜欢这种视频的话，记得帮我做一件事，帮我 hit 那个 like button。And 现在我就要开始了，可是我一定要用英文嘛，因为没有可能他会说中文。Okay, so Guy, hi, welcome. Well, thanks for coming for this interview.
你好 Jonathan, good to see you.
Wow, 你好。
That's all I know.
That's all I know. Yeah, Guy. So everyone sees you on the screen on YouTube. You're one of the most beloved YouTuber. Alright, when it comes to crypto, mind to share with me your experience? How do you get into this field?
I guess to take it right back to the start, I first came across Bitcoin in, I think it was 2014. No, earlier than that, 2013. I walked into a bar in London near where I was living at the time, and I saw a sign behind the bar that said, we accept Bitcoin accepted here. And I was like, what is that?
That was 2014?
Yeah.
In London?
I think that was 2013. So that was late 2013. So I got really interested in it. And this was about the time that Mt. Gox was collapsing.
Yeah.
So when I went to research Bitcoin, like a lot of it was, a lot of the stuff that I was coming across was like, oh, Mt. Gox, all this. And I was like, this is fascinating, but also kind of scary because it looks like this exchange, it looks like this whole thing could be about to just implode. So I didn't actually buy any until 2014 when the Mt. Gox thing had happened. Obviously, it was a big disaster, but Bitcoin wasn't too badly affected. Like nothing, the networks kept going. At that point, I was like, okay, if it can survive something like this, like it's obviously legit. Do you know what I mean? And so I got into researching it more and more. I got into sort of writing about it. I met Nick, my co-founder and co-host here on the channel. We decided to start a website, write about crypto, write about Bitcoin, but also all the other stuff happening in the space. And then we decided to take that onto YouTube. It was my idea to sort of do a YouTube channel. I was like, maybe this is something we could explore. It was like, okay, well, who's going to present it then? So, well, it was your idea. So that's how I ended up doing it. And in the early days, like Nick and I were doing sort of all the research, all the writing and stuff like that. Nick was even editing the videos himself.
Oh, wow.
He's not like a trained video editor. He was doing it all himself. But yeah, we kept producing it. We kept trying to, do more research than anyone else. And we just grew and grew. And, I think the pandemic came along and that was big. And obviously everyone was locked down. So people were sort of switching on to crypto content and it just went from there.
Respect the fact that you guys are hustlers. Because back then you don't have all these AI tools to do video edits like what we have today.
No.
Back then it was really manual work, right?
Yeah.
Before I go on to the next question, I'd like to ask you, at that point of time during the Mt. Gox scandal, the entire sentiment towards Bitcoin was so low. Why did you still choose to buy Bitcoin despite the fear in the market?
Well, like I say, I saw, the Mt. Gox thing happened. And I think a lot of people, and, me as well to an extent, were sort of waiting to see, like, okay, if this happens, is the whole thing going to collapse? And the fact that it didn't, and like I say, the network kept on going. And it was like, okay. And what I realized was that, the decentralized nature of Bitcoin means that the network itself, the protocol itself, is solid. But obviously, there's a pain point with these centralized entities building on top of it or adjacent to it, if you like. And it was for me, that was a bit of a light bulb moment in that it's like, okay, there's Bitcoin, but then there's all the other ways that we interact with it. And there can be problems with that. And we've seen that, we still see that today. There's problems with exchanges. There can be problems with wallets. There can be problems with all this infrastructure that interacts with Bitcoin. But Bitcoin itself, it just keeps going. Through every disaster, blocks keep getting produced, transactions keep happening, the network functions as Satoshi intended it to.
And so you went into Bitcoin like 2014?
2014, yeah.
2014. Yeah. Today is like 2025. It's been 11 years.
Yeah.
The entire crypto space has evolved from the Bitcoin days to we then had the Ethereum ICO and then we had the metaverse, the NFTs. How's your investment philosophy today when it comes to investing into crypto?
It's kind of the same as it was back in those early days. It's like, research. Dig into these projects. Find out everything that you can about them. Because if one thing that we found and one thing that, we've put to our advantage in building Coin Bureau is that this information is out there. Most of this information that you need to know is out there somewhere, and the trick is to look for it. And we've always based our research on publicly available information because, obviously, we hear things as a channel, as a team. We hear rumors, we hear things that might well be true, but we don't know. And the last thing we want to do is to spread information that may be false. So to go back to your original question, it comes down to research. This information is out there. It's on you as an investor to find it. So that's how I look. And that has evolved over time because sometimes I've researched projects really deeply, I love everything about them and it doesn't turn out to be a great investment. There can be any number of reasons for that. Sometimes you also just, whether you have a feeling about a project as well, do you feel like, is this something that's needed right now? Does the research tell you that this is an interesting project with the right, with the right fundamentals, with the right use case, with the right team? I think a lot of it, because I've been in this space for 11 years now, some of it is gut, it's just how do I feel in my gut? It's because there's an element of risk with any crypto investment that you make, much larger than you would with other traditional investments. So I like to sort of trust my instincts as well.
Chances are if our viewers here who's watching this video, they are researchers as well. They love to get information. However, when it comes to the entire crypto space, there's so much things to look at, so much information to look at. Often look at it as a space with information overload.
Yeah.
And you don't really know what's the real news, what's the fake news, the real data or fake data. Today, even exchanges can do wash trading.
Yeah.
And they can create all these fake data to trap investors. So for yourself, where do you go for reliable news or reliable information?
It's a good question. We always start, so if we're researching a particular project, we always start with the project itself. So its website, its socials, and any sort of material that they put out. If there's information missing there, like if it's really difficult to find information on the team, red flag straight away. So sometimes you'll start researching a project and within 5 minutes you'll be like, this is suspect, like things aren't right here. But we'll start with that, and we comb through the documents. Any project worth looking at will have put its documentation online. They'll have done a good job of explaining what it is they're trying to achieve. Their team will be out there, in ideally public. I've invested in projects before where the team was anonymous, and I'm not going to do that again. So that's really important to just try and find out everything that the project is saying about itself, because obviously that information tells you a lot, but you also get a lot of information from what they don't tell you. If it's clear that they've got something to hide, or they're not being forthcoming with particular information, straight away, that is, you're asking questions. Straight away, you should be suspicious, because it's like, this space, we need more transparency. We need to have information about these projects because there's just so many, So a project that is willing to put out all the information it can out there, tell you everything that you need to know, that is a good sign. And that's, you start from there. And then there are all these, and then you can go to sort of secondary resources as well. Obviously, in terms of, there are loads of good websites that have sprung up over the last few years. Things like DeFi Llama, Tokenomists, Token Unlocks, things like that, that can tell you, that can give you this reliable data. And certain crypto media sites as well, other YouTube channels, people's Twitters and stuff, they're all good sources of information. But you have to start with the project itself and find out what it's telling you and what it's not telling you.
So right now there's like 13 million cryptocurrencies in the market.
Yeah.
I remember when I first went into crypto when it was around 2017. There was only like 5,000 cryptocurrencies, and right now we have 13 million. Personally, what's your take on the narratives will be trending? As we speak today, it's May 2025.
Yeah.
So timestamp May 2025. So yourself, what are the narratives and trends that you're looking at in year 2025?
In terms of, AI is going to be big. AI and crypto, there is a natural crossover with that. And that's why I'm so interested in things like AI agents and stuff, because I can foresee a time, probably not too far away, where AI agents are using crypto wallets to transact on the blockchain on behalf of their owners, masters, whatever you want to call them. So I think there's a natural crossover with crypto and AI. Obviously, there's a ton of vaporware projects that are, say that they're AI related and they're not. But AI is definitely a sector to watch. DeFi as well, because I think there's crossover there. There's a natural home with, again, AI agents and DeFi. I think that's a really exciting sort of sector to be looking at, because DeFi is complicated. But if you can have an AI agent do some of that work for you, interact with smart contracts, move your money across chains, across protocols, I think that's going to open up the sector to a lot more people who at the moment are a bit sort of like, I don't really want to touch that, it's too complicated. So AI, DeFi, things like stablecoins. Stablecoins at the moment are crypto's killer app. People talk about real world assets, RWAs, and we already have RWAs, stablecoins. We have dollars on chain. And I think that is just going to keep growing. Every metric is going up and to the right with stablecoins. It's so easy to see how they're going to be adopted. I've spoken just this week when the Token 2049 conference has been going on. Yep. You speak to people from across the world. I had a really interesting chat with some guy who said, he sends money to his family in Africa using stablecoins. Whereas before, he would have had to have used Western Union or banks or something like that, and they would have taken a cut. And now he can do it, and it's so quick. And obviously, if it's a dollar-backed stablecoin, that's giving people access to US dollars, which many, many people want. But I think we're also going to see other stablecoins in other national currencies pop up. They're already talking about dirham-backed stablecoins for here in the UAE. We're seeing legislation as well, like the EU. It's got MiCA. Okay, that's kind of, a lot of people aren't very happy about that, but it is still a regulatory framework that they've got. There's 2 stablecoin bills working their way through Congress in the US. So I think stablecoins are impossible to ignore. And it's, they're already being used, which is really important.
It's interesting you're talking about stablecoin and regulations. And right now we are starting to see the SEC in US, they're starting to regulate crypto in a very different manner compared to the Gary Gensler's administration. How do you see crypto moving forward with the current Trump administration, with them adopting strategic Bitcoin reserve? Do you think crypto will be more and more regulated, and will it move to become like equities? Or do you think it will have its world of its own?
That's a very good question. And I don't think anyone really knows the answer, because we need regulation. This is the tricky thing. We need regulation in order for the space to thrive, because at the moment, there are too many people, there are too many projects exploiting the fact that crypto is a bit of a grey area when it comes to legislation. Yep. And that is leading ultimately to investors losing money. Predatory VCs or, predatory teams or whatever, it's out making money in a shady way. So we need this regulation. I guess the worry is, from the perspective of the crypto industry, are we going to get regulation that we like? Because it may be that it has to be quite restrictive. That may be a good thing. That would be a good thing if it stops, if it stops so much scammy stuff coming to the fore. If it stops, if it forces people to build properly. But if it goes too far, it could also kind of stifle innovation as well. And this was the whole problem with Gary Gensler's SEC. It was just like, no, it's a security. And it's like, well, that securities legislation that you've got in place is 100 years old. You have to adapt to this new paradigm. And they weren't willing to do that. So the challenge is, I think, it's great that the SEC is under new leadership who seems to be positive towards crypto and seems to understand it. Now the challenge is, can they put regulation in place that protects investors, that protects projects, that makes it easy for crypto founders to build in a compliant way, but doesn't also put the brakes on innovation? That is really tricky. I wouldn't want to be in there. That's a difficult job that they've got to do, because you can't let the industry run away. This is the frustrating thing. We have a saying in English: if you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. Yeah. At the moment, that I think is what the danger is. So it needs to strike that balance between setting clear guidelines, setting clear rails, not stifling it. It's going to be tricky.
Do you see yourself more of an investor or a trader?
Oh, investor. Yeah.
Do you trade?
No.
Not at all. You don't look at charts?
I mean, I do. I have some basic charting knowledge. So I will factor that in if I'm looking at a particular coin. I will look at it for interest just to see what the chart looks like today. But I realized a long time ago that trading was not something that's, because I haven't got that sort of brain, I don't think. I don't look at a chart and just, am captivated. It's sort of like I'm much more prefer digging into fundamentals and stuff like we were talking about earlier. So I prefer to leave trading to experts.
Yeah. So you're more of a fundamental investor.
Yeah.
And how do you manage your portfolio? Are you more of a Bitcoin maxi, or are you more of an altcoin maxi?
I mean, I guess if you were to weigh it, Bitcoin versus altcoins, I'm more an altcoin maxi. My portfolio, I think, is about 45 to 50% Bitcoin. Bitcoin is my largest individual holding and always will be. I do hold quite a lot of different altcoins. I mean, I still hold some ETH for my sins. Things like Sol, Sui, Near are my other, are my sort of next largest holdings. All altcoins, I think, are really, really interesting projects and have a lot of potential. Yeah, layer one. Yeah,
layer ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
The last few months, I think, have tested my patience with altcoins a lot because I think it's like what you were saying earlier. There are 13 million cryptocurrencies now, and we just, that is unsustainable.
Yep.
I wouldn't say that I'm becoming a Bitcoin maxi, but certainly my strategy over the next few months is that if we see a general uplift in the market, then some of my altcoin positions, once they're profitable, I will sell into stable coins and eventually, I think, move into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is my long-term savings. I think a bit like Bitcoin dominance, I'm sort of moving up and to the right a bit. But that said, I still believe in altcoins. I still find, I guess the thing is, I find the altcoin space so interesting. There are so much of it is rubbish, but there are little nuggets of gold in there. And that's what keeps me coming back. So I will always be an altcoiner to some extent.
So when you got into Bitcoin 2014, which year got into Ethereum?
Yeah, I did buy something. I didn't buy ETH at ICO or anything like that, but I did. I remember sort of buying it. I'm trying to think when I first bought ETH, whether it was 2015 or 2016. But yeah, I mean, again, I was one of those people, I was watching it and I was fascinated and I was like, I wonder how this is going to pan out. And by the time you sort of realize that, okay, this thing has a future, you've sort of missed the boat to an extent. But I don't, that doesn't keep me up at night. I don't worry, I could have got ETH for pennies. I do know people who went sort of all in at the ETH ICO and now live very comfortable lives. But you see these things, you see these big events come along, and I guess the DAO hack for me was sort of Ethereum's version of Mt. Gox. You're like, this huge thing, this huge problem. And of course, this time it was actually a problem, arguably with the protocol itself. So that was really interesting to see how that worked out. And obviously, they rolled back the chain and you had Ethereum. Well, we actually used the new Ethereum that came out of that split. The old Ethereum Classic, is obviously still going, but no one really uses it. But that was a fascinating time. So I think I sort of waited till that was passed before I really went in on ETH.
And that was still early. I think that was 2016.
I think so. Yeah, 2016. 2016. Yeah, fairly early in still Ethereum's life. Yeah.
Right. Right now, when it comes to layer one, you have Ethereum, you have Solana, you have Sui, you have Near. Which one do you think will be the winner moving ahead?
Well, I think they can all win because I think we will end up in a multi-chain. How I see it is in a few years' time, hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll have all these cool blockchain-based apps regular people will be using, and they won't know they're using a blockchain at all. They won't know and they won't care. They'll just have a cool thing on their phone that works. And all these layer ones will be connected, whether that's via interoperability protocols or bridges or however it is. All these layer ones will be operating, together beneath the surface. And I'll be able to, send you something on Solana and you receive it on Ethereum or you receive it on Sui or something like that. But crucially, we won't know. So I think there is a future where all of these can survive. I think some of them, this was something I discussed in my conversation with CZ, and I said to him, do you think layer ones are going to have to specialize? Is there going to be a DeFi layer one? Is there going to be a gaming layer one? Is there going to be a meme coin layer one? Which is kind of seems like the direction we're going in at the moment. Is there going to be an AI layer one? That was why I invested in Near, for example, because that seems to be what they're going after. And he sort of disagreed with me on that. He says that he believes that layer ones are going to have to do everything. And I think there's some truth in that. I just think that maybe market forces are going to drag it in different directions. So, for instance, I think Ethereum could well end up as the RWA layer one. Because we're seeing, the likes of BlackRock are really interested in that. I think they've just announced that they're tokenizing their treasury fund on Ethereum. That is potentially huge. Solana seems to be leaning into payments. Like, obviously, meme coins was big for them. That's kind of died a bit. I think there'll always be meme coins. So there'll always be that call for Solana in that respect. But, we were talking about stable coins earlier. Solana could be that network. Again, Sui as well. Very fast, very cheap. I guess the question is which ones aren't going to survive. That I don't know. I mean, I think, there are ones that they're just not being used much. They just don't have much in the way of stable coin volume. You can see them probably dropping away. Ideally, in a few years' time, most people don't know and don't care which layer one they're using.
Is this the only 4 layer ones you have?
I think so. Well, I also hold some Peak, for example. Peak is a Depin focus layer one.
Yeah.
There may be a couple of others as well, because sometimes you sort of forget. It's like, yes, it's a layer one as well. But yeah, I think those are all the layer ones I hold. Yeah.
So Peak is a different narrative in the Depin network, right? So among these 4 layer one, if I have you to list from your favorite to the least favorite, which one would that be? Which will be the top of your list? Which will be the bottom of your list? Ethereum, Solana, Sui, and Near. Okay. I think at the top of the one I'm most sort of bullish on at the moment is Sui. Okay.
Because we're saying we're off to Sui base camp a little later on today, so maybe it's just top of my mind. But the things I like about Sui, I think for one thing they've got a good narrative, as in a Solana killer. Now, some people will say, well, that's just a narrative, that's just a buzz phrase, but narrative counts for a lot in crypto. So they've got a good narrative. There seems to be a lot of ecosystem growth happening there. There's a lot going on. They've got a growing DeFi ecosystem. They've got growing stablecoin volumes. They've got growing TVL. They're leaning heavily into gaming. They've got this handheld device coming out very soon. There's sort of
play.
Yeah, exactly. And as we saw with the Solana phone, hardware is a really interesting way to get people interacting with the blockchain. So assuming that goes well, assuming the Sui Play device is good and the rollout goes well, that could be extremely bullish for it. Sui has done a really good job of marketing themselves. And this is really important. Like Adani, who is out there front and center, I remember when Jessica was working with us, she did a Discord space with Adani, and he was so good at just putting Sui's vision out there. It's marketing at the end of the day. But Sui, I think, have done a really good job of marketing themselves. So I would put Sui at the top. Solana, I still think, it's struggling a little bit in price-wise and narrative-wise because of the sort of meme coin backlash. But like I say, I think it's moving into PayFi, which I think is going to be big for it. Memes will always be a thing. Solana also has a killer app in Phantom. And I don't think people give Phantom enough credit for some of Solana's success. They've made this really easy way to interact with the blockchain. If you compare that to something like MetaMask, the MetaMask experience has improved, but it still isn't great. So I go Sui my top, Solana. Near has been a bit quiet, but I have a lot of faith in the team and the technology behind that. So I put that, and then Ethereum will be fine in the long run, but it's just we're kind of waiting to see how it goes. Really interesting to see how Pectra upgrade goes and things like that. But
which is happening on 7th of May.
Yeah, right? Very soon.
Yeah,
very soon.
Yeah. So just now you mentioned the top 3 narratives: AI. What's the other 2?
So AI, DeFi.
DeFi.
And I'm excited about Depin as well, or payments too.
Okay. Stablecoin.
Stablecoins. Yes.
Stablecoin. So AI. Besides Near, which is your top crypto when it comes to AI for yourself?
That's a tricky one. I don't hold Bitensor. I don't hold any Tau.
You don't hold it?
I don't, but I've been sort of trying to understand it.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to understand it a little better. I think it's very, very interesting to see people like Barry Silbert, who does not do many interviews. He has been out there front and center talking about it. Bitensor has a big community behind it. So I'm exploring that. I think I might well, be dipping my toes into Tau soon as well. I also, for my sins, I got really into AI agents. When I just got so fascinated by them. They had a real moment in sort of December and January.
Yep.
So I still hold one called Vader, which Vader.
That's like a meme AI.
It was, but it ran a sort of investment DAO.
Okay.
So it was, there was actually a use for it, and I was just fascinated by that. They seem to be attracting a lot of investment, a lot of sign-ups for their DAO. So I have a small bag of that, which is down, but I think is one I'm still interested in. And I will get back into AI agents as well because I really think there's a lot of potential there.
End of last year, we saw cookie pumping because of the AI agent narrative. In April this year, when the market started recovering, we also saw virtual making 4 times and cookies start coming back. However, I'm also seeing Fetch going into AI agents too.
Yeah.
And they have a partnership with Pig as well.
Mm-hmm.
What's your view on AI agent moving forward?
Lots of people pointed out that when AI agents kicked off, a lot of them were just meme coins with AI attached.
With that narrative, right?
Yeah. So we had, I guess, the inevitable bullshit phase where it was just like, it's an AI agent. You buy it, it's cool.
Yeah.
So now we need to see actual utility. We now need to see these things actually doing something.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I interviewed shortly before Christmas, so towards the end of last year, I interviewed a guy called Lincoln Murr who works at Coinbase and is working on these AI agents. And what he was saying just really excited me about that whole space, because going back to what I was saying earlier, I think at some point we will be using AI agents to do a lot of sort of stuff on chain that at the moment takes up quite a lot of our time.
Yep.
Let's say I have an AI agent called Jonathan.
Yep.
And I could be like, okay, here's X amount of money. I want you to go and I want you to invest that. I want you to generate, sort of a safe return. Maybe you set your risk tolerance to medium or something. And that AI agent can take it, move it across different chains, put it into lending protocols, maybe borrow against it, maybe even buy a meme coin if it, because it's able to scrape all this data and see what narratives are running hot, etc. That I find exciting, because I think we will eventually have maybe a whole team of AI agents. Everyone will have their own team of AI agents working for them. Maybe it'll all just be combined into one. I'm kind of hopeful that eventually we may, as humans, be spending less time on the internet, because we will be telling these AI agents to do this stuff that at the moment we do ourselves. And I hope that means that we're able to spend more time doing things that are, real life, like spending time talking face to face, spending time with friends, family, outdoors, doing stuff. That might sound a bit utopian, and it might never come to pass, but I really think there's the potential for that to happen.
Then which coin will be the top of your list when it comes to AI agent?
I'm not sure at the moment. I guess near, in terms of I think as the sort of infra layer for them. Again, things like Bitensor are leaning into that as well. But it's still, I haven't quite figured that out yet. That's a question I need to find an answer to.
How about DeFi? Which will be the top of your list?
DeFi, there are tons. I mean, things like, I really like the idea of sort of battle-tested protocols like Aave. Aave, I've held off buying Aave, and I really should get into it, because it's a great project. It just keeps doing it. Yeah, you sort of think, am I late? But it's just, it's battle-tested. It keeps doing what it does, and it just keeps generating fees. It keeps generating revenue. Ethena, I did recently buy some ENA, and I'm very impressed with how that's held up. They've just signed a partnership with Ton, to bring their products to all their users. So, although Ethena is a newer project, I think that's really exciting. And it seems, I hope, that the lessons of things like Terra Luna have been learned in the building of these projects. And, we saw a big market downturn recently. And again, these DeFi protocols, they held up. They did what they were supposed to do. So, Aave and Ethena are two ones. But there are tons. There are interesting ones on Solana. There are interesting ones on Sui as well. So,
how about Depin?
Depin is a sector I really want to do well. I am still excited about it to a large extent. I think there's a struggle at the moment for people to adopt it. There's a lot of criticism of Depin and some of its mechanics and incentives. I love the idea that these Depin networks can incentivize people to provide this decentralized infrastructure. You've got projects like Helium. Helium has had its up and downs, but it's working. People are using it. World Mobile Token is another one. I hold some World Mobile. Just doing what crypto was supposed to do, connecting people and giving people the opportunity to participate in this decentralized network and be rewarded for it. In a lot of ways, I think Depin is sort of much truer to some of the founding principles of crypto than so many of these other niches, so many other projects or use cases are. So I really want to see it do well, because it's not financialized in the same way that DeFi is. It doesn't necessarily need so much in the way of regulation, but I think we're still struggling to get that initial sort of lift off, even with projects like Helium and World Mobile. They do and doing it well.
You've been in crypto space more than 10 years. Do you think the Bitcoin 4-year cycle is still valid?
I'm not sure. I don't know anymore. I'm beginning to wonder, a lot of people say, well, is the bull market over? Are we in a bear market now? I'm beginning to wonder whether that's even whether we are going to see a bear market. Yeah. In the sense of Bitcoin is so much more accessible to so many more investors. It's a much more mainstream asset than it ever was. Yep. I kind of find it hard to believe that it will continue to follow these 4-year cycles, because it's just, when it was just a small handful of crypto people, that was easy to imagine. Now that it's so much bigger, I just don't know whether that can hold up. And of course, with future halvings now, even though we expect the price of BTC to keep climbing, these future halvings, the emissions are becoming less and less important. So I think the 4-year cycle probably is going to break down.
So I shared my YouTube video before. I think the 4-year cycle is no longer valid because people who hold less than 10 Bitcoins total is less than 22%.
Yeah.
So right now you have the whales, you have the institutions all holding Bitcoin. So the game have kind of changed. So we are starting to see mini bulls. We are starting to see the crypto market being tied to Nasdaq. In your opinion, right now we are starting to see the market rebounding. How do you see the market moving forward in 2025?
I think probably we've got this is the 2nd of May we're recording this. I think probably we've got a little bit more to run here. We need to see, so much of it is dependent on macroeconomics now. So we need to see things like signing tariff agreements with countries. Obviously, everyone wants to see an agreement with China, but even if it's agreement with much smaller countries, that will show that these tariffs are being slowly worked out, and I think that will give the market confidence. We're seeing increased liquidity. We're seeing interest rates in the US are eventually going to go down again. Those are all potentially bullish catalysts. However, I think there are still sort of a lot of things to be concerned about. If you were talking about, say, a retail-focused bull run, consumers everywhere are really squeezed. Consumer confidence is really low. Credit card debt is really high. I think we have to, if we want to see big pumps in Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market, it's going to be institutions driving it. And increased liquidity and lower rates will help with that. I would rather retail were driving it. I would rather, individuals across the world were buying Bitcoin and were buying altcoins, because I think the idea of institutions pumping our bags is nice, but that comes with, we don't want crypto just to become a plaything of institutions and banks. That's not what it was designed for.
Yeah, that's not what it stands for. It stands for the small guys, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're losing sight of that. Yeah. And okay, it's amazing to see Michael Saylor and Strategy buying up all this Bitcoin, and what they're doing is really interesting. At the same time, it would be much better if it was just millions of people across the world buying $10, $100 worth of Bitcoin or what they can afford. That, I think, for me, would be more long-term sustainable.
Totally agree. What would be your last advice for our viewers over here?
I think you've got to have, if you're investing in crypto, if you're interested in the space, you've got to think long-term. I think people who think short-term, people who try, traders, as I say, I'm not a trader. Good traders are able to, profit in the short term, but it's harder than it looks, I think. And a lot of people give the impression that trading is easy, and it isn't. I think look at this from a long-term perspective. Especially with Bitcoin. I use Bitcoin as a savings vehicle. So, you know, if you take a long-term perspective on it, then you will make money, especially on Bitcoin. Look ahead, think about what you want this technology to achieve. And like I say, I think in this future that we're heading towards, we are going to have a whole web of cryptos working beneath the surface to bring us cool apps, but it is going to take time. And I think this is going to be a race that goes to the patient rather than the swift.
So thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Jonathan, thank you, man.
Thanks for coming on this channel, Coin Bureau Chinese. 那如果你是第一次听这个 Coin Bureau Chinese 的话，记得帮我做一件事，帮我不止 hit 那个 like button， 帮我 hit 那个 subscribe button and hit notification bell. And 你要记得 Coin Bureau 华语是 under Coin Bureau Group， 所以也是要去这个 Coin Bureau 的这个 YouTube channel。Guy 和他的 partner Nick 是在 main 的 Coin Bureau channel。Make sure 你也是去 subscribe 那个 YouTube channel，OK？ 所以希望你喜欢这个礼拜的影片，我们下个礼拜见吧，拜拜，
拜拜。